Welcome. I'm Rogers Anderson, Williamson County's mayor, and today we have the distinct pleasure and honor to introduce a fairly new employee, a young lady that has taken over our archives and museum at 5 Points, Aimee Saunders. Welcome.
Well, oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
We are honored to have you here today to talk a little bit about our museum and our archives. And people are excited. By the time this show airs, we will have had Memorial Day services, and you've got some exciting things that you have arranged to be in our building down at 5 Points. And I think it'll be interesting to hear some of the conversations that come out of this display. But before we talk about the archives, let's talk about Aimee.
Okay.
And where do you come from, and how did you get involved in this? And I know you're an archivist, which is kind of a new term for me, and I certainly don't want to spell it, but I know you have spent a lot of your life to get to this point where you can really show and showcase some of your talents to better benefit the museum and archives that is Williamson County. So, Aimee, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I moved here about 2 years ago, almost 2.5, from Rhode Island. I lived in Middletown, which is, if anybody knows Rhode Island, it's right near Newport, home of the mansions and beautiful ocean. And I've traded that for beautiful mountains and hills and pastures. I love it here. It's so beautiful. But I've lived on both coasts. And I went to college in Virginia, Central Virginia, Randolph-Macon Women's College, where I studied history. I've always enjoyed history ever since I was little. I think when I went to the library as a child, I would always pick the books that had something to do with history. I loved going. I can remember in Virginia, when I was in school, we'd take field trips to Mount Vernon and places like that, and I would just stand in the rooms and imagine myself back in time. And so I really trace my love of history back to, I would say, about 5 years old. But yeah, so I trained as an archivist at Simmons College in Boston. And being an archivist is really kind of interesting. I tend to describe it as looking at, or having the privilege of being able to look at other people's mail, because you get to read a lot of very interesting things. It's not just deeds and wills, which are very interesting in themselves, but sometimes you do get to go through other people's mail.
Well, and I know when we had the retirement, when Mrs. Louise Lynch, who as she has often said, and many other in this community, kind of birthed the archives and the museum that we have. And then she took retirement. She wanted to enjoy some things in our community and go back to her home. And it was a hard decision for her, but she did retire. And so when we started the journey looking for an individual that would take over as the director, we had a lot of people, a lot of applicants, as you know, and I think it's a very intense interviewing process, the way we do things here. And I was surprised at just how many archivists that there are out there that had applied for the job, and with a strong emphasis in the things you just outlined, that you enjoyed reading other people's mail, but also the museum side. And that I personally think that our facility that we have located at 5 Points, that's open from 8 to 4:30 every day. We'd like to get that open up on Saturday, when we certainly can have the ability to put more people there, and the interest is there. But the museum is and our facility and our collection is one of the better that we would have across the state of Tennessee. Now, certainly the State Museum is where most people would have that opportunity to go and travel. But I know in your interviewing processes, and you've been here a month, and you haven't really had a chance to roll up your sleeves and do the things that you're going to be most proud about. But you're making some strides and changes, and you got a vision that I think most people would like to hear that. How do you see the facility and what you're doing? How are we going to get that message out on the street that attracts people to come back in, that you're going to change it, change some of the things that are there and rotate that? And a good example of that is what we have got currently on display, that we had on display for the Memorial Day services here just a couple of a few days ago.
Yes, one of the things that I wanted to start doing is bringing in some temporary exhibits that would complement the absolutely fabulous collection that's already down there. People have been very generous, and Mrs. Lynch set up a very, very nice museum, and there you can just see there's a wealth of information about Williamson County residents already in the museum. And so one of the things I thought would be interesting to bring people back who maybe saw it when it first opened, or they don't always think about to bring their guests when they come into town to see see about the county's history. But one of the first exhibit that we brought in was put together by the Museum of the American Military Experience, and I probably messed that name up because it's very long, but suffice it to say, their charge is to kind of collect the veteran experience and really tell the stories behind the objects, so that you're not only looking at the objects, you get to know the person, and the objects tell the story. So it's still up. The display will be up until August, and it features items from 2 Vietnam veterans, and then a World War II veteran. The Vietnam veterans are from Williamson County, and the one from World War II, he's from Crossville. But anyway, it's really great, and people find it interesting because one of the items is a shaving cream can. So I know people go right over to look at it like, what is this? But the story is the shaving cream can became sort of a talisman for the soldier. So he had this thing, he needed to have that can with him, it needed to be full, and then that would keep him alive during all the conflict. So as long as that happened. But anyway, and we have set up the TV right next to the display, and he's interviewed, so you can hear his story in his own words and then look at his objects. So people come in and they zero right in on that display and find it very interesting.
Well, I find it very interesting that probably our facility, and I don't really know what the majority of people come in there. Is it to view and study and look at and observe our museum side, or is it more on the searching of documents and records and wills and reading those letters? I guess it's maybe split a 50-50. People certainly out of town, the majority of them would be just interested in seeing the history in this community, but not always.
No, there actually are quite a few people who come in town just to do genealogical research. So we do have quite a number of visitors from out of town who will come and spend all day in our reading room looking at the indexes that Mrs. Lynch put together over the years, which are probably one of the best resources in the library section of our building, because it gives you access to what the records are, and where to look very easily. But they will spend all day looking at that, and sometimes they won't go into the museum. But then you have some of our regular genealogical researchers who do go into the museum and see, because they'll notice, oh, you moved something around, what did you do? For instance, recently I put together with our staff, Brenda and Rose, we highlighted some family Bibles. They had been out, but I thought, these are great objects and they do tell a story themselves. So we displayed them, and they're right in the front entranceway near the quilts. So people should come and see that as well.
You mentioned Brenda and Rose, and oftentimes, and you haven't had the opportunity to work with these ladies, but I hate to call them a fixture, but they have been there a while.
There, yes.
And what a wonderful job they've done. What a great credit that they have brought to our facility, and being there, daily employees. I know you've recently hired, or we have another employee that will be coming online, coming to work. It's a changing time of our history. Not the history's changing, but it's figuring out ways to get this message out. One of the things that we talked about early on in the interviewing process, and it takes time and it takes certainly money, but to be able to get more and more of our data and information in the 20th century available to people through the different electronic means that we have. And that is very tedious to do, but it's an area we've got to go to.
Well, definitely, not only to help researchers who cannot get to our building, but also just for interest. You know, when people type in a Google search, it'll bring, it'll help to bring, you know, some Williamson County items to the forefront. And what Brenda and Rose have been doing for many years is scanning. So there is quite a bank of digital images all ready to go. So, well, I say that, but it will require work to get them into some kind of content management system to get them online. But I see that as a different avenue to access the information that's already there. And that work, you know, it's been years. I believe more than 8 years that they've been scanning. So, and I can't tell you how, like you said, it's time consuming, it's tedious, but in the end it is very important, especially for just disseminating the information and having it online. And you know, we can do it in fun ways too. Use Facebook. I know a lot of people use Facebook to get news, but also just to see interesting things, you know, so have an image a week, or, you know, use kind of crowdsourcing to get people to identify people in photographs that we don't know who they are.
You know, I think a lot of people may have a misconception about our facility and what the archives and the museum is all about. It's not for people, just for people my age. Certainly you're not anywhere close my age. We're not going there with that conversation, but you know, it's capturing that intuitive, creative young mind that will take us down the road, the next Aimee Saunders, that falls in love with something about history and wants to preserve. And what makes that person tick is not going to make everyone tick, but there's something at our archives for everyone if they'll take the time to research it.
You know, I have to share this story on the last day of school. 2 boys rode up on their bicycles and they came in to look at the museum, and they spent, I would say, about 20 minutes walking around, but I just thought that this is why I do it. I do it to get, you know, to appeal to those kids, or anybody really, who enjoys history that much. And so I thought, well, what a great thing. We're, you know, first day out of school, or, you know, I think they had a half day or something. Let's ride on over.
Well, the truth may be, they just didn't want to go home and get busy mowing the yard.
No, well, probably.
Knowing boys like I do and having a few of them, but they were delaying that process. But on the other, they could have gone a lot of places.
They could have gone a lot of places,
and they chose to come there. You know, when we talk about our museum, there's just a mountain high worth of material. I'm not sure that's good English. However, I do know that we have got some of the best collections of different things down at the museum. The BGA collection, we call it the BGA collection, but it's really a collection of Civil War artifacts, memorabilia, everything from the gunshot balls, all the way to the swords, to the knives, the canteens, the uniforms, that over a period of time have been collected and given or donated or allowed to be used. And if you're a Civil War enthusiast, you need to be in there.
Definitely, you know, see the polk flag.
Kind of explain what the polk flag is.
Well, it's, I'm not really sure actually.
It is a,
I believe it's a battle flag, but we had
That's
someone
right.
came in and they thought it might have been a contemporary reproduction because it didn't have the holes that you could hold it, you know. So maybe it was a decorative version of what they would have used, but it is very large. I would say at least 11 feet long. And then taller. But then there's also the stars hanging, which we had someone who knows quite a bit about the Civil War and said he hadn't seen one in that good of condition, and I know it was restored and sent to a conservator, so it actually is a very fine example of a banner like that. So those are two objects that I think people should come and see. And then, you know, of course, the large American flag in the reading room. It's, you know, very eye-catching because people look at it and they're like, wait a second, there's some stars missing. So it's all, people are always very interested to see those older flags.
and we have a journey of history in Williamson County, and from early 1800s, our way of life, the farming, the ag side. Of course, as most people know, in Williamson County, that was the way of life. For we were incorporated as a county in 1799, so 200 plus years, and only the last 25 or 30 have we been this progressive county that most people see and identify with now. And for many of us, there was no mall here until the middle 1990s, and that's a very short period of time when you consider everything that's occurred in Williamson County. So if you're new to the community, I do encourage and employ people to come and see the history of our county and where we were and where we have come from. I'm not real sure where we're going sometimes. Even as the mayor, I do know we're growing. We're the fastest growing county in the state of Tennessee. We are noted now for headquarter towns. We are noted for large corporations moving into our town to bring jobs. That brings an opportunity. Our claim to fame for the last 10 to 15 years may be our public education. Solid public education both in the Franklin Special School District, the Williamson County School District, and our private schools. We are thankful for that. It's a constant challenge that our community brings, but if you go back and look at some of the history of the men and women that were here and those families, I think it gives it more credence. I think it gives it some credibility that all of this didn't just happen in the last 25 years. It was a building up to.
Right. And I think as things change, people are more, well, I would say almost more interested, like what used to be here, because they'll hear stories, and so they want to figure it out. And I think that's one of the places, you know, the museum is one of the places that you can find out those things.
We got a lot of people in our community spend a great deal of time down there doing research. You know, Thelma Battle, I think she's put in an enormous amount of time and energy in the Afro-American community, the black community. That there's a tremendous history in our community about that. And I know we have a lot of people that from all over the United States, but certainly here in the South, do fall back on the history of that era.
Yeah, people want to know where they came from, who they came from, and so, you know, having the research resources that Thelma Battle's come up with is just invaluable going forward. And the same is true for any of the genealogists. You know, they very helpfully most of the time will leave some of their research at with us, so that when people come searching for their families, they can, you know, already see what's been done, and it helps you along your way. And even if you're just starting and you don't know quite where to go, you can come in and we'll be happy to help you.
Recently, I had the opportunity to interview. Actually, he was sitting in your chair, Rick Warwick. You know, a very kind, very generous individual that has spent a great deal of time and energy doing work for not only the archives of the museum, but for so many other people. And there are just so many people. Miss Bowman, I don't know if you've had the opportunity to meet Mrs. Bowman. There's just not a more fine example of an individual that loves this city and county than Ms. Bowman. I know that there's probably some relationships that could be developed between our Williamson County Public Library and our archives, some sharing of resources. I think it's important when you're kind of getting your thoughts together on how do we do things together, because so many communities across, I know, the state of Tennessee, not all of them have a museum or archives. And if they do, they're usually buried in the basement of the old courthouse that you have no access to, and it's nothing but dirty and dingy and certainly not in any chronological order that makes sense. But because those types of facilities like we've got do take resources, and they take a commitment upon the funding agency to make that available to the public. And in other words, it costs money to do that. But I do know there are relationships that can be developed with our public libraries and our archives and our museum. It'd be interesting to hear your comments on how do we accomplish that, and what is available out there.
Well, I think one of the first things that we can do, and actually looking into it, and it should happen relatively quickly, is that we can, because right now you can't search and see what materials we have in our library, in our reading room, or even with our records. And of course the library has their catalog, and so why not put our materials in with the library materials, so that when you search Williamson County, you will get all of the resources that are available on Williamson County history in one place. So that is, and we can do that just by functioning as a branch in the library catalog terminology. But I think that's a great place, because one of the hardest things about doing research is figuring out where all the materials are. So definitely sharing resources in a virtual sense, not necessarily physically, but in a virtual sense, so that you can search one interface and get all of the resources for the county.
We got about 5 minutes left.
Okay.
And there's probably some things that I have just failed to ask, or that you might want to get out. I know one of them, as I was sitting here, you can certainly go to the Williamson County website and make contact with you. I don't know what your phone number is, but I hope you do.
It's 790-5462.
And we'll ask the staff here to kind of verify that.
Verify that. But I think that's what I don't call myself. But yes.
And you're looking for volunteers. You're looking for people that want to give of their time and energy. And for those people that have the gift of speaking or something different, you're not closed-minded to that either.
No, I definitely would love to hear from people who have a story that they want to tell, that they want to share. Maybe it's a local history book that they've written about their house, about their family, or about their town. I would definitely love to hear that. Or even if you just want to share a story, casually, stop by. We really just want to encourage people to come out and see what we have to offer.
We offer tours?
We do have tours, and we would definitely love to have some volunteers who could maybe expand that so that we can offer them more to school groups, things like that, come the fall.
The purpose of the archives is to display Williamson County and our the ability to go back and search and do the recordings, or pull out the recordings of records. But there's also a current side that you just kind of talked about, and that's the many volunteers, those men and women, both the young and old, that would like to be involved in that process. And so we need help. We need those volunteers. We need those men and women. And one of the hardest things to do is taking our children out of the classrooms and bringing them there as a group. Bringing children of 20 and 25 and 50 is a very, very difficult thing to do. However, that doesn't mean those teachers and those parents can't bring them, or particularly the parents, bring them 1 and 2s and 5s and take an individual tour and do the research. I think that's the success of where we are, and I think you have the ability to interface with our state archives, the records, the museum. I know there's associations, there's trade associations. I know you'll be traveling to also.
Society of American Archivists.
And in the area of the museum, where it's very difficult to store everything.
Yes.
And preserve everything. But if you're watching this show and there's that old item that you've got that means something to you, may not mean much to the next generation, please contact us.
Yeah, let us know. I mean, anything to help document what life was like in the county. That's what we're looking for.
And finally, I want to touch on the quilts. I don't know that all museums have quilts, but our community loves quilts.
Yes, and we have some great examples of current ones, but then also some of the older patterns for coverlets. It's really quite astounding, the number. I would say we have at least 100.
And you know, there's not to say that somewhere down the road that we couldn't have a quilt convention or a quilt, what would you call that? I'm trying to look.
A quilt show?
Quilt show, maybe that's it. That would display those, but to interact, and again, that's working with people in our community through the convention, the Visitors Bureau, and there's just so much opportunity down there.
Yeah, there is a lot, definitely.
Well, we've just about hit the end of our time show. We got about 30 seconds left. Anything you want to say? And
come down to see us. Definitely, I'm looking forward to it. I'd like to meet people, and I'd like to show you what we have.
Aimee Saunders is our new director. 5 points for our museum and archives. It's a busy place. It's open from 8 to 4:30 Monday through Friday currently.
Yes.
Come down and see what she's done. Come down and see what has been accumulated in Williamson County. I'm Rogers Anderson. We'll see you around at a different time, at a different place. Have a good day.
Recycling grocery bags is catching on.
Here's my favorite.
Let's reduce packaging by getting one big bottle, and it's recyclable.
Ooh, this box is heavy.
Oh, we'll get this small container of concentrate instead. It's recyclable too.
Now that's smart shopping. Less packaging and more recyclables.
Oh, we're